Hello, everybody. Joe Hart, our beloved Joe Hart, passed away, as we all know. A big hole in our hearts. But we do a thing called Cruisin The Burg, and I had the honor of having Joe in the car last summer. And unfortunately, we can only do about 12 or 13 minutes of video because that's about as long as people will watch. But we have nearly an hour of video, so we thought in honor of Joe, we'd go ahead and publish the entire hour, have fun enjoying it. A lot of memories of Joe. He did a great job on the first 13 minutes, and the rest of it's definitely worth watching. So, Joe, we love you. We know you're in a good place, and here's some more memories for everybody to take away for you. Well, today we're Cruisin The Burg with, I don't even have to say your name, Joe Hart. I just told somebody I was going out with Joe Hart to do Cruisin The Burg, and they said, well, he knows everybody in town. It's probably going to go really well, so no pressure.
Probably ask you why.
No. Well, thanks, buddy, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
We're going to be driving over here by Block 22, which I think is where you kind of got your start.
I came from a very small town of Richmond, Kansas, between Garnett and Ottawa, and I was went through a country school. I was the only one in my class for 7.5 years.
So head of your class.
Yeah, I mean I couldn't help it.
We would have guessed that anyway.
And well, talking about this. Block 22 is that I have a good connection because I had an office in here with the Northwestern Mutual.
Where was it?
It's on the third floor, right next to the elevator. And
how old were you when you started Northwest Mutual?
Oh, I was 24.
Wow.
And I was with them 64 years.
Who kind of got you into that? How'd you?
Well, I interviewed out at Pittsburg State. I spent a lot of good years in that building right there.
That's where it all happened?
Oh, yeah.
And so from there, you moved all the way down the street.
Yeah.
When did you move down here?
Well, and the first thing I'd like to say is that I selected Pittsburg, Kansas to live in.
Okay.
To sell. I picked Pittsburgh.
Like they gave you an option?
Oh, yeah, I could have gone anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What were some of the other options?
Oh, well, I mean, anywhere.
Literally,
it could have been Kansas City, any city or any town you wanted to be in, but it was it was always your choice.
When did you move to this building?
I moved here about 16 years ago and got a nice group of people. John Mazurek bought the building not too long ago, and he's got all those birds there.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice artwork, I think.
Yeah, and it's nice, and John has been a good landlord.
So you've been there for 16 years,
right? Mm-hmm.
And you don't have any plans of moving. That's
Well, no. Well, I have one more year.
Oh, really?
11 months. I have 11 months left to go.
Not that you're counting.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not really counting either because I've always enjoyed what I've been doing. Because it was always meeting people. And I guess that's probably the reason why I got involved in a lot of things because, if you knew people, it was easier to communicate and get together with them.
Yeah, but you're also helping people. It's not just working with them. I mean, you're literally ensuring them in for their worst of times usually, and that's pretty important. What's the best part about it? Just
the best part about it, well, I would say is helping the people, getting to know people, and the people have been very kind to me. I've been very fortunate, is that, the one thing is that most of the people that I've done business with, I'd say probably a good 80% of them, we've become very good friends. And that's kind of unusual. That doesn't happen in a larger community.
So you have a unique personality because you're just so nice and upbeat. Have you always been like that, or did you kind of become that in order to sell and be successful?
No, I was always like that. I guess my mother always wondered why my younger brother and I were so outgoing and nobody else in the family was. And she thought we got that in college, but I don't think we got it in college. But
how big was your family? You had one brother?
No, I had. There were 6 in my family, and
oh man! And you grew up in?
Yeah, and I came down here to college, and probably the best thing about Pittsburg State is that's where I met my wife Sally. She was from Pittsburg, Kansas, and that's where I met her. I met her through the Newman Club, the Newman Catholic
Center.
Well, that's our
next. Yeah, that's where we're going next.
Right.
So blind date? She knocked your books out of your hand?
Well, no. Well,
there.
it was in the library. I made a bet with her. You know.
You met her
Yeah.
by betting with her. What was the bet?
The bet was over her birthday. You know, my birthday's May the 9th, and she said, well, her dad's birthday was May the 9th, and I said, well, mine's May the 9th too. And she said it is not. She said, I'll bet you a dinner. I said, you're sorry you made that bet. So a couple of days later, we had the date.
Did you have to whip out the driver's license? I mean, how does it go?
Well, I mean, the thing is, we were eating out there at, my gosh, where is that? Atkinson and Broadway. They used to have a restaurant there on the northeast corner.
Right.
I forget what the name of it was, but we were sitting in there, and I was having a beer, and she was, you know, we were eating, and we got up to go dancing, and came back, and her purse was gone. She said, somebody stole my purse. And I said, hey, that's nothing. Somebody stole my beer. So
seriously?
Yeah.
You guys went up to dance and somebody stole your purse and your beer.
And they found her. The police from Miami, Oklahoma called her about 4 o'clock the next morning and said they found it. Okay, like this right here, the Catholic Center on Cancer campus, always known as St. Pius X. And I was very active when I was in college here, and was vice president. Went on national conventions, and
this is beautiful.
and it is. And I tell you what, and Father David, look, he and I were co-chairman of the drive to raise $3 million, and we made it. But no, it's a beautiful place. If you haven't been inside of it, the chapel is outstanding. Yeah.
So this is kind of where it all started for you.
Oh, yeah. And
Jack Overman Center.
Jack Overman
stories, I bet.
Yeah.
So what was growing up like? So you got 6 people in your family. I mean, were you
I was born and raised on a farm, and always was required to do morning and evening chores. And
so you did have some free time though, where you could just kick around for the day.
Yeah, well, I tell you what. One thing I was always proud of. I was heavily involved in 4-H. And so what I did is that I raised livestock as projects and sold them, and I always had my own spending money.
And that's the greatest.
I never had to ask my parents for money when I was in grade school or high school.
And that is satisfying. I know so many kids that have gone through 4-H.
Oh yeah, well,
you learn about business.
And my folks never complained about it either.
Well, no, I mean, like you said, you had your own money.
No, I did. I really loved 4-H. I used to show livestock at the state fair at Hutchinson a couple years in a row, and we'd stay there for the whole week. I would.
Yeah, so the university. So you got the 4-year degree. What did you do?
Yeah, I got it. You know, it shocks a lot of people, but I have a degree in business and a minor in. I have a degree, major in English and a minor in business. So a lot of people
a major in English.
They wonder about that. And I never had any intention of teaching either.
Just thought it was.
Oh well, I was
worldly
heavily involved with it, and so I just thought I would keep going.
Did you enjoy college? I mean, was it?
Right. And right down here, where the Alumni Center is, and when you talk about John, he just got a new job, didn't he?
Yes.
John got a promotion, and running that Alumni Center, John was the best. He was good, and I had a good friend by the name of Ken Bateman, who got me involved in Rotary and a lot of other things, and he was the first, I think, alumni director here.
Ken was?
Yep.
Yeah, he's in Rotary with us. He's a fantastic guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's still doing stuff. I mean, he's a busy guy.
Ken Bateman probably knows more about Rotary than anybody.
Well, how did this come about? I mean, was this a fundraiser project? I mean, this was.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, when I was president of the Alumni Association, which was many years ago, Ken Bateman and I, he was the alumni director, and Jack Overman, he was, of course, with the university, and we were, and somebody else, and I forget who it was having a meeting, and they were just in the process of talking about buying this piece of property right here. And Jack Overman knew more than the rest of us. He was a friend of Jack Wilkinson, okay? And so what he did is that he said, you know what, I can just picture you guys a building sitting down on this piece of property, which would be the alumni center, and where alumni could come in from all over, and you could have alumni get-togethers. But he knew something.
He had the
we didn't
vision,
know. Right?
Well, he had the vision, and there it sits, and it's a beautiful
Oh yeah,
building.
especially. Well, Jack Overman was quite a guy. You know,
Special guy.
he was the only guy that could dress up in all kind of crazy things and get by with it. You know, like at a football game, he was always dressed up. You know, and
President's house.
but he was probably one of the biggest, promoters of Pittsburgh State there was.
Well, you've known a lot of presidents then,
Yeah.
and a good run, right? I mean,
Oh,
just
yeah.
a bunch of great ones. This is a great area.
And I've had a chance, to work with, Dr. Steve Scott when he was president. In fact, he and I chaired the the United Way Fund Drive.
Yeah, he's a go-getter. He's still
And
serving.
it was
for us.
the last time I think it made its go.
What do you think about this one? Who's this guy?
Oh,
What's the name on that?
Gene Bicknell? Oh my gosh. Gene Bicknell and I, we go back a long ways together because I have a picture of him when he and I were in JC's, and he was we would have a fund drive to raise money for the athletic scholarship fund on campus, and he was our chairman. And I got this picture of him where he's handing out cards of people for us to call on.
So you guys go way back. That's
Oh yeah.
in JC's ball fields. I mean, that's obviously named after
Well,
JC's. I'm assuming.
Well, and the thing, and Gene was always, and I still communicate with him today, just by text, and he's always done a lot for Pittsburgh. And the one thing I've always said about him, he never forgets a name.
I know, it's amazing.
Well, I know it.
I talked to him last weekend, and we stopped by and said hey, and mentioned we were doing this, and he spoke highly of you. But he doesn't. I used to think he was just messing with me, and he was just making up that he knew everybody. And then he turns out, I think he knows
Oh
everybody.
yeah, he does.
So you did some fundraising. So now we're on South Rouse. There's obviously a lot of projects over here. We've got a fire station over here. I mean, weren't you involved tangentially in
Well,
some of this fundraising?
we had a bond issue for the fire station, and the library, and also for the swimming pool.
Was that all at once?
Yeah, all at once. And I was active on the one as far as the library was concerned, and our committee, which was Jack Overman was on it, and several different people, but this is one of them right there. The results. And
Pretty
gosh, they
successful.
had everything so organized, and so they needed a chairman for the drive, to run the campaign, to get people out to vote. And I remember I walked in this meeting, and Ed McNally, he was in on it, and so I was sitting there, and somebody said, well, all we need is a chairman. Ed McNally spoke up, and he said, well, why don't we get Joe Hart? Said he doesn't do anything anyway.
Were you there?
Oh yeah, I was there. But he and I used to have some, maybe I'd walk into a meeting. He was always very kind to me.
Ed McNally?
Oh yeah, and Ed McNally would always write a postcard. He wouldn't call you or send you a letter, open postcard. What do you want? At one time he said, Joe, he said, I'm retiring as the 25 years on the Kansas City Southern Railroad Board of Directors, and they're going to give me some money to buy an annuity or something. And you know what? And so he said, I get this postcard from him, and he said, Joe, he said, I want you. This is what's taking place. And he said, I want to do it with you, and I want to do it with the Northwestern Mutual. And so next thing I knew, I was driving up to Kansas City to pick up a big check from the treasurer of Kansas City Southern.
But he wrote all that down. He didn't
Yeah,
call you
well,
up.
no call. I mean, anybody, the postman, anybody could read, but he always did that. And you know what? A nice article in regard to, Ron here and his boys in the paper yesterday, I think it was. In regard to the ownership of that store.
They've done a heck of a lot with it.
Yeah, I knew.
I know they've got a few others too, but I mean, it's a pillar in the
Oh
community.
yeah, well, and they've done a beautiful job with it. And I've worked with his wife, Barbara Rhodes, on the Community Foundation of Southeast Kansas, which is a going Jesse.
Yes.
Oh yeah, community. I tell you what, I think the thing that really surprised me the most about the Community Foundation is the Southeast Kansas is how it gained so much credibility so quickly.
Yeah, because I think it basically started about the time I got
you know
here.
what? They own land over in close to Ark City, Kansas. Well,
we've done some big projects, and they've been the the trail system that we built. We had all the money, the donations all went to them. It was very
I
easy
remember
to
Gordon
do.
Elliott saying one time, and he said, "You know what, Joe?" He said, walking out of one of those meetings, he said, "I think this is the best board I've ever served on."
Really. Well, it does a huge service for
And
the
talking
area.
about Gordon, I used to pull some tricks on him, and one time at a chamber coffee, of course he was always dressed neat, and that was when he was still president of National Pizza, and he has this nice looking jacket on, and he's standing there talking to a couple guys, and I knew him real well, and I wouldn't do anything to hurt him, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey Gordon," I said, "great looking jacket." He said, "Thanks, Joe." And by the way, I said, "What's the dog sleeping on this morning?" And these other two guys, I didn't know who they were, but they looked at me as if to say, "Hey, who are you to talk to this guy like
This
that?"
is Gordon Elliott.
Well, you know what, and there's a lot of good people in Pittsburgh, and I couldn't have chosen a better town to live in and to raise a family.
Well,
And we've gone through some instances in our lives, I lost a son at age 7 when he was age 7,
I'm sorry to hear
a
that.
freak accident at home, and that's the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, that's tough. That's and how many kids did you have?
Well, I had 4,
Four?
counting him. Yeah, I have a son, Brian. It's in Kansas City. We were just up there for his youngest daughter's wedding, and
Congratulations.
and she's a piece of work, and she came up to me after the mass, and she said, "Hey, Grandpa," said, "how do you like my dress?" I said, "Hey, I love your dress," but she had everything planned out at that wedding. It was beautiful.
How
And then
old
I
is she?
have a son that lives in Denver, and he's on the opposite end. Is that he has a daughter that's 20, and she's very severely mentally and physically handicapped.
She's 20.
Yeah, 20 years old, but she can't do anything. He has to do everything.
That is a
Go on
burden.
down around here a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I point me?
Well, let's see, Jim Van Bezo lives right there, Jim and Wava. They've been good friends of ours for years, and I've grown up, and I really got to know their family real well, and
This is the neighborhood that really does it up at Christmas. They have all those huge
oh
light
yeah,
strings.
mm-hmm.
So we're heading out to the, kind of the whole golf complex, YMCA, the pool. So was this another one of the Bond?
Yeah.
Bond, was this one the same
Swimming
one?
pool.
Was it a brand new pool? Was it to open it, or was it just to fix it up? How long?
Well, no, it was, gosh,
Tell me about
I think the pool was probably there, but they just built it, redid it, and made it into what it is today.
it. It's quite an asset now.
Yeah. Well, and like the library, I'm glad I have to say something about the library because, first of all, Bev Clarkson is something else. I've served on that board for about 5 years now, and gosh, the publicity she gets, and which is great, but you have to work for that.
Well,
to get that, and she does, and my gosh, it's fantastic.
She's got
I would like to, but she deserves so much credit.
Well, she's a special lady. I mean, the amount of
yeah.
programming that they do for the kids, it's
Well, and all those programs they have, and all the, like I told her, I said, congratulated her on the coverage that they had outdoors. It was terrific.
well, she was married to our finance director, Jamie, who retired.
Right.
Between the two of them, I bet they have a pretty efficient household because they get
Right.
stuff done. Those guys just know how to get it done.
You know Steve Riddell?
Oh yeah.
Steve Riddell he's a neat guy, and he would do anything for you. He's like his dad. His dad, Jim Riddell, would do anything for you. But nobody ever knew, like at his wake, walking down the aisle at St. Mary's Church, the place was packed, and this guy came up to me and he said, you know what? Nobody in this town realizes how much good Jim Riddell did. I mean, for nothing.
Oh really? I know Steve pretty well, and I
Steve.
hear about his dad all the time.
Yeah, and Steve's another one. Well, his dad was a piece of work. He took a long time. He was one of the first guys I think I sold insurance to. And boy, you talk about an intimidator. Boy, until you got to know him, he would work you over. And all you wanted to do was get out of there as fast as you could.
Are you a pickleballer?
Yeah, I've just played once, but I've seen it. It's kind of interesting how it's picked up so much, hasn't it?
They had 42 teams out here in a tournament this weekend over the 4th of July.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's popular. It's amazing.
No, and you think, like, I used to play a lot of racquetball at the Y, and that's dead. Nobody plays racquetball.
Yeah, racquetball was huge back in the 70s, though. We're getting a new mini golf course.
Yeah, and I tell you what, this is going to be a big change too, isn't it?
Yeah, this is going to be so long overdue.
Oh yeah, that's going to be
$400,000 with a state grant and some private money. And
yeah.
It's going to be it's needed. This was in disrepair kind of when I got here, but it's amazing, and we have to have mini golf.
And let's see, who was it that was helping raise the money for it? I should know it at the tip of my tongue.
Joe Leake.
Joe Leake, yeah, Joe Leake. He worked hard on this, to raise some private
$180,000 he raised.
Isn't that great?
And it wasn't too long. Now we're just waiting on the grant to get approved and hopefully get it built this year. But now we're co-chairs.
Well, Steve Scott and I were, co-chair of the United Way campaign a number of years ago. I wondered what kind of role he wanted to play in it. So, because a lot of people, they want to use it just because of their name, and I thought maybe that's what they wanted to use. And so they asked me if I would be the co-chairman with him. And I said, hey, you know what? I said, if you ask him, because he want me on board. And so I went out to see him, and I asked him, okay, I said, okay, Steve, that they asked me to be co-chairman with you. And I said, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? I said, are you wanting to take an active part? He said, Joe, I'll do anything you want me to do. And we did, and the nice thing, about it, like after the first week of that campaign, one Sunday afternoon, I was at home, I get a phone call about 4:00 in the afternoon from the guy is deceased, C.A. Bud Walker. He was part owner of the Texas Rangers at one time.
Okay.
But Bud Walker called me, and I knew him. I didn't know him socially, but knew him. And he said, hey, Joe, I hear you're heading up the United Way campaign. And he said, I know they've had problems raising the money in the past. And he said, I'd like to help you. And he said, do you need, I said, I'd be willing to give $10,000, $20,000, even up to $50,000 for you to make your goal. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm in awe of that. And I said, I'm really at this time, I'm hoping that we don't need your help. But I said, I really appreciate it. He said, well, keep me involved. And I did. And so anyway, we made our goal. So I told him, I said, well, we really didn't need his money. But I said, you know what? One thing, Bud, I just seeing that this current year, when they're paying out the funds, they were short $23,000. And I said, how would you feel about making that up so all these places can get their money. And he said, well, where do I take the check? But, that's the type of people, you have here. And this place right here, the YMCA.
Yes, with the Y.
Oh, I mean, I worked on their membership drive probably for 35, 37 years or whatever. I'd play, a lot of times I played with this priest, and he was a good athlete. The coaches up at St. Mary's would say, who'd you play this morning? And he said, well, I played Joe Hart. And he said, did you beat him? He said, no, he beat me. And you said, you're kidding. You let him beat you? Because Father, he would say, he'd hit the ball and he'd stop and I wouldn't return it. And he said, Joe, how come you didn't return the ball? I said, because the ball hit the floor before it hit the wall. He said, what? I said, Father, the ball hit the floor before it hit the wall. And he said, you're kidding. We said that about 3 or 4 times. He says to me, he said, you know what? He said, I can't believe you're saying that to a priest. And I said, hey, don't pull that stuff on me this morning, Joe. But you know what? The YMCA, like I said, made a lot of good friends there. And, Bob Dipman, of the Dipman Insurance Agency, my gosh, and when I was in the hospital about a year ago with a broken pelvic bone, and gosh, yeah, that's where I met he and his the young one, he and his wife at the YMCA.
So what about this building here?
Well, all I know is it was a McNally building, and my wife's dad worked for McNally's, Patterson, and he traveled all over the world for him. He was considered an expert on coal preparation beds.
Okay.
And so he traveled, all over. They sent him all over the world.
Yeah, this was an international company, right?
Mm-hmm. Going into Rick Webb, I've known him for a long time, and know his mother probably even better. And his mother is a piece of work.
How do you know Kaylin?
Oh, just through my wife Sally, and that's how I got. And Kaylin, has done a lot of good in this town, and but she and I have always been. We kind of hit each other with vibes back and forth. And she'll come up to me and she'll say, Joe, don't you say a word. So anyway, on that Nine Away campaign I was talking about earlier, what I talked to Rick and I said, hey, you know what? I said, I need some help from somebody for your company. I said, to make our go. And he said, that's because I said, I think the person you have probably isn't that interested at the time. And he said, well, you're probably right. I said, and he said, hey, have you ever worked with my mother? I said, oh yeah, I've worked with your mother. And, but she was, and you know what? And so I asked her if she'd do it, take over Watco and their collections, and they went from 10,000 that one year, 8,000 one year before, to over 18,000 because of her. So she said, Joe, give me 2 days.
Made it a priority.
Give me 2 days and I'll have this thing organized.
They've really grown that company, huh?
Oh yeah. Well, you know what, and I knew Rick's dad, and he knew my wife Sally years before I ever was around here.
I didn't know Dick. When I got here, one of the first people I met was Rick, and obviously he was well on his way to, they'd really turn this into something else. Yeah. But just a nice, generous.
And I was just getting ready to say is that when I broke my pelvic bone about a year ago this month, I was out in the hospital 12 days, 13 days, and they treated me so well, and I was in rehab. So I asked the gal the second week, the gal who was in charge of physical therapy, and I said, hey, you know what, Sarah, hey, which one of these machines do your people hate to go on the most? And she said, that machine over there. And I said, that's the one I want to get on. So I got on it, and I don't know, for some reason, you know, maybe I had a little different attitude than some of them, but you know, it wasn't that bad, you know, at all. But they did, you know, and the head nurse came in to me the day before I left, or 2 days before I left, and she said, well, tomorrow's my day off, but I will be back from the Bon Voyage tomorrow, the next day when you leave. And she said, she came in and she said, Joe, can I sit down here a minute and talk to you? I said, sure. And she said, she sat down, she said, one thing I wanted to ask you. I said, I have a question. She said, well, what have you been doing all your life? And I said, well, mostly harassing people like you. But they were so great, you know, and
Easy
I
to get
couldn't
along
have
with.
asked for any better. I tell you what, Harvey Dean is a piece of work in his own right. He and Sharon. Harvey Dean, he, you know, my wife hasn't been feeling good, Sally, for a long time, you know, and Harvey would always bring up, you know, for every Sunday for a while, Sunday afternoon, he'd call me and he said, you guys home? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I'll bring you some strawberries. Well, he'd come and he'd say, hey, I picked you some strawberries. Well, he had just come from Costco for, I mean, the place over in Joplin, you know, and he said, I just picked these out of my garden. I said, yeah, I can tell by the grass stains on your knees, you know. But we pulled a, you know what he did to me one time? He and his wife, Ken Bateman and his wife, and Sally and I were down at Joplin on New Year's Eve at the 609 Club. And it was about 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening. We were eating. And all at once, here comes Jerry Kill. Jerry, who's now was one of the most successful assistant coaches out here, is now the coach at Colorado State, you know. New Mexico State. And he's been Minnesota coach and all that. And my gosh, he comes up to me and he's looking at me. And back of me, we were at the 609 Club. Back of me was sitting my friends, the other 5 people, including my wife. And you know what? All at once, I don't have his attention because he's looking over my shoulder and he got this big smile on his face, and I wonder, now what the heck is he laughing about? And so I turned around, and at the table where I was sitting, everybody, and Harvey Dean did this, everybody had paper sacks over their heads, and they had eyes cut out, the eyes cut out in the sack, and it says, we do not know Joe Hart. And that's what, you know, Jerry Keel was laughing about, you know.
How's downtown doing?
Well, I tell you what, you know what's interesting, encouraging? This stuff like this. And like here, they're fixing this
What
up.
a corner they did over there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, I was talking to the daughter, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, how's it going? She said, well, it's slow. But I said, well, you know what? I said, it really looks nice. The finishing touch.
Yeah, it's a finishing touch at 7th and Broadway. And then, you know, the work they're doing on the middle school. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of money is being spent, but if it looks like it's going to be very nice, and well, the one thing is going to be usable.
Yeah, they've got science labs in there. They have
But look at, you know it's going to be. Well, you know, you said, what's your favorite memory of going to Pittsburg State? And I had to put this in because I was talking to my wife about Sally about this. She said, well, did you say meeting you? And so now I'm,
well,
so Sally, if you ever see this, why meeting you was the biggest enjoyment of going to Pitt State. So now that's on record.
We're official.
And then one other thing that's been nice is that Pittsburg State, you know, in their athletic programs, is that I've always, I don't know where I ever got the ideas from, but I came up with some ideas to honor the senior academic athlete at Pittsburg State, and really tried to make a big deal of it. You know, I'd invite their parents, and I'd talk to their parents, and I'd talk to their kids first, ask them, "Can I talk to your parents?" You know, because not all of them wanted to talk to them. Wanted me to talk to their parents.
Right.
But no, it's that was so neat, and I go into places and I see the assistant track coach out the college, Mantooth. I said, yeah, I don't know if I've ever met you. And he said, yeah. He said, you've met me. He said, right here back on the wall is this picture of the gorilla framed picture that you gave me, that you gave me of that celebration, And he said he had it up there. Well, and a lot of them have kept that thing. And one day at Rotary, I was sitting by Heard, the principal of the Pittsburg High School. And I introduced myself, and I said, what's your name? And she said, Heard. She said, I met you before. I said, I was one of the first people you recognized as a senior academic athlete. Well, and it was. And
is that Colin?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's doing a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, well, she's a neat lady.
And isn't her father in Rotary with us?
Yeah, he is. He's
Jess.
He's a pharmacist.
Oh, I thought he was a pilot.
What?
I thought Jess was a pilot.
Oh, Jess. That's her dad.
Oh, that's her dad. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about her husband. Yeah. But you know what? The one thing is I guess that. Being involved in a lot of different things is that I've met a lot of nice people.
Well, you're a nice person, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I've met a lot of nice people. And I did, and of course, Bill Russell's picture was in the paper recently, and he was a Pittsburg High School graduate, and was a starting shortstop for the Dodgers for 8 years. He's from here, and we used to. Oh yeah, I knew him real well. I used to play basketball with him at the Y as an 18 and 19-year-old, and then the Dodgers says, "Hey, you're not playing any more basketball during the off season. We don't want you getting hurt." But Bill was a nice guy. In fact, he was the honorary chairman of our Christmas parade one year, and I sponsored a get-together over the park for him, so people could come in and meet him and greet him and all that. I think the attitude of Pittsburgh is much better than it was, 10 years ago and on down the line.
In what way? Just more positive?
I mean, more activity, more positive thinking, and it's just, been in those areas where, because I remember many years ago, I even thought about my gosh, I think I'll go over to Joplin.
Oh, yeah.
So, but, I was glad I didn't, but then, I got to tell you what, another people too I want to mention is, is Jeff Wilbert. Jeff Wilbert, everybody knows Jeff Wilbert, and he's done more and doing more for this town. I asked him, I said, you know what, they ought to really be auditing you because he's the treasurer of so many organizations. I don't know how he keeps this straight.
But he does a great job.
But I tell you what, when a year ago when I fell and hurt myself, people came with, and Lori Sponchek, the State Farm agent, she came out the hospital, and nice gal, and I've just known her through the chamber, and she brought me a bouquet of roses. And then probably about a couple of weeks after that, after getting out of the hospital, and here she comes with because we were talking about when she was there visiting me, lasagna. She comes and brings a pan of lasagna. And so then what happens, I was telling a guy about it, Kip Bollinger, at Dittman's insurance agency. And so he and I, we go round and around, and he is so generous. He would bring, every Saturday morning for about 5-6 weeks, he would always bring me a breakfast from somewhere here in town. And one time, I was telling him about Lorianne Spacek, bringing me those flowers, and also bringing me a pan of lasagna. So, okay. So one Saturday morning, here the doorbell rings. I go to the door, and it's him. And it's Kip, and Kip has a big pot of flowers for me.
Right.
And then he has a big pan of homemade lasagna. And he brings it in and he said, no way am I going to let another insurance agent here in town
Outdo me.
outdo me.
No, he's got a great sense of humor. They all
yeah.
do. Lori Ann's sweet. I mean, I know you mentioned a lot of people today, but you're right there with them, Joe. You've been ever since I moved to town, you've been one of the first business people that I met that, was lighthearted, but said, hey, you're going to do fine, and welcome my family. And
well,
it means a lot
what,
to me.
and I commend you from the standpoint of you probably won't get the same good report like you've got on the past people you've interviewed in your car deal, but after having me on,
We don't get it.
but anyway,
Everybody
I
loves
think
you.
it's but you've been out in the public eye, and I think that's a good thing. You open yourself to criticism, but I think it's better that way.
You need to. It's
you
I
can-
work for I'm the public's guy, man.
Yeah, you
I'm
can
lucky to have the job. And well, enough about me. I'm going to tell you, you're a joy, you're a treasure. And I told people we were going to get together. They were excited and they thought, he's going to have a lot of stories, and you have. But I just want to tell you, thanks for being my friend, and thanks for
Wow.
being an honest businessman and setting the bar up for the rest of them. And thanks for getting into this car and driving around and sharing
Well,
some of
you
your
know
stories.
what? Thank you. Your biggest criticism may be that you asked me to go.
If that's the worst thing that happens to me,
Oh,
we
yeah.
consider it